Good evening, our dear viewers, and welcome to our special program on the occasion of the 120th anniversary of Kuwaiti-British relations. The state of Kuwait and the United Kingdom today mark the 120th anniversary of signing the Anglo-Kuwaiti Agreement of January 23, 1889. Now, the agreement was signed to provide protection to Kuwait from regional and international threats. Kuwait and Britain are holding various functions and activities in celebrations of the treaty's anniversary, which was part of a long tradition of friendship and solidarity. On this occasion, we have with us today in our show three visiting scholars from the UK who will share with us some of their thoughts and document the strong ties between Kuwait and Britain. Our first guest that we have for you tonight will be Mr. Amr Sultan, a journalist who has master's degree in international media from London. Let's watch together this report on the British officials who visited Kuwait, and we will be back with our guest.
Former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher played a vital role in mobilizing international support for the liberation of Kuwait after the Iraqi invasion on August 2, 1990. Thatcher started to prepare for possible military action to liberate Kuwait. On August 6th, both Thatcher and U.S. President George H.W. Bush had led the UN Security Council to pass Resolution 661, which placed economic sanctions on Iraq and also authorized military force in the event Iraq did not retreat. As UK Prime Minister, Thatcher had been a frequent visitor to all the Gulf states. She held long and detailed conversations on how to maintain and develop Britain's joint interests with the GCC states. Moreover, after Thatcher demonstrated her determination that Kuwait must be liberated, she was welcomed by the Gulf states as a close and valued friend. British Premier David Cameron, on his visit to Kuwait in February of 2011, stressed the deep-seated ties binding the two friendly countries, speaking highly of what the state of Kuwait made of achievements since its liberation and independence. Cameron added that the two world leaders sensed then the danger, as it was former U.S. President George Bush and former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher who explained the situation when they said that Iraq's invasion of Kuwait challenged all principles of the United Nations. Cameron made clear that the partnership between Britain and Kuwait is based on the economic future of the two countries, which he said should grow and diversify in such a world which is fraught with challenges. He added that there are common security interests requiring attention, with increasing threats from terror and extremism, and that British partnership played a key role in fulfilling the hopes of development for the people of the Arab Gulf region. During UK former Prime Minister David Cameron's visit to Kuwait, he announced an agreement to double bilateral trade and investments from 2 billion British pounds to 4 billion British pounds in 2015. The trade agreement positions the UK as Kuwait's partner of choice for delivering much of its $140 billion development plan, involving more than 1,000 projects covering infrastructure, healthcare, housing, and education. British companies worked on projects such as the Kuwait International Airport building, while British Telecom helped in the development of the telecommunications sector. In February of 2015, Britain's heir apparent, Prince Charles of Wales, on a state visit to Kuwait, met with His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jaber al-Sabah, and had a friendly discussion that reflected the depth of the historical relations between Kuwait and the United Kingdom and stressed the continued efforts to promote bilateral cooperation between both friendly countries in all fields. The British monarch held talks with Kuwait Investment Authority officials on how the Sovereign Wealth Fund could contribute to environmental projects which could contribute to sustainable development and low carbon emissions. He went on to hail the long-standing relationship between the KIA, one of the biggest investing sovereign wealth funds in London, and Britain, which he said mirrors the relationship between both sides. Kuwaiti-British relations are strong and developed, not only in the fields of oil, investments, and defense, but also in other domains such as economy, trade, and education, as well as tourism, where the official visits of both countries represents a solid proof of their developed relations.
Welcome back, our dear viewers, and welcome to the show. We would like to welcome again Mr. Amr Sultan, who is with us tonight to talk about this occasion of the 120th relations between Kuwait and Britain. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now we're going to begin about talking about the visits, exchanging the official visits between the two countries. Now this has contributed to strengthening the relationship at all levels. Would you please explain to us how these mutual visits helped in strengthening those relations?
Yeah, well, the concept of the visit is not just a visit. You have to look behind the visits. There's a lot of work being done to arrange a visit. When a Western leader visits a Gulf country or Kuwait, or sending one of his ministers to visit Kuwait, it means a lot of things. And let me go back to 1979. When the Queen Elizabeth II made the first ever tour to the Gulf states. She started from Kuwait, and this means a lot of things for Kuwait. It means there's a strong relations between the UK and Kuwait, and how the UK government looks at the role of Kuwait in not only in the Gulf states, but in the whole regions. And if you go back again to 2017, after the crisis between the GCC and Qatar, Boris Johnson himself, the former UK Foreign Secretary, had to visit Kuwait to understand what's going on. And this reflects the appreciation of the Kuwaiti rules in trying to diffuse the problem and trying to contain the crisis, which actually threatening all the Western interests in the area. And in 2018, when the new Defense Secretary, Gavin Williamson, only after 2 months after he took the office, he visited Kuwait. And this was a crucial visit for him. And it means that there is a lot of things could be done between the UK and Kuwait in terms of defense, security, fighting terrorism and extremism. And in terms of trade, for example, Liam Fox in 2017 had to visit Kuwait after the UK voted to leave the EU. And at that moment, the UK government decided that we have to strengthen our relations with Kuwait, because Kuwait is a very good partner for us and we have to rely on them, and we need to know what the perspective, how can we improve the bilateral relations between the two countries. So the visits again is not just a visit, you have to look behind it, you have to look the timing, and you have to look the significance of the visit. That's why the joint steering group, which has been established during the visit of the Emir Kuwait state visit to UK at 2012, in every single statement since then confirmed that we have to stress on the importance of the bilateral visits between the two countries.
Yes. And also throughout the long history of mutual relations, the state of Kuwait and Britain, they signed numerous agreements in different fields. What domains do these agreements cover, if you want to talk about it in general?
Yeah, it's actually a long list of agreements and relations in all levels, at all levels. in economy, education, trade, international cooperation in fighting terrorism, in security, and even regional stability. And I need only to concentrate in two things. First, on memorandum of understanding between the two countries on research, which is education and research, which is quite an important thing. I understand that within the Kuwaiti National Development Plan 2015 to 2020, a part of it based on reforms and the development of human resources. And a part of this is education. And this morning, during the event has been confirmed, it has been stressed that the UK government, the UK universities are the #1 destination for the Kuwaiti students. It means that the Kuwait is very clever to concentrate on the education system of the UK in order to help the Kuwaiti youth to develop themselves, to be a part of the development plan in this country. The other part is the agreement between Kuwait and the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies. And energy, as we all know, is the most important part of the Kuwaiti economy. And when the Kuwaiti government concentrates on such agreements, it means they have plan for future. It means they know how can the UK government and UK institutions and establishments help the UK development plan, especially in energy. And that's why this is two key things in the relations in terms of agreements between the two countries.
Yeah. Now, how did these numerous agreements has been signed in the past, how did it help strengthening the bilateral relations?
It has actually a lot. A part of any strategic relations between two partners is economy and trade and such cooperation. That's why whenever you have a crisis in the Middle East or in the Gulf states, you will find the UK government concentrates on the role of Kuwait. A few weeks ago, Alistair Burt, the UK Foreign Minister for the Middle East, said that the bonds, not only bonds, which is stronger than relations, bonds between the UK and Kuwait constitute the foundations of the relation between GCC and the United Kingdom. It says a lot in terms of this occasion. Not only that, if you remember, there was a visit in 2017 by some members of the all-parliamentary Kuwaiti group in the House of Commons visited when they visit Kuwait. One of the key aim of this group is to make the UK government understand Kuwait. Not only that, understand the role of Kuwait in the whole Middle East. How can we cooperate to stabilize this is unstable area?
Yes. Now, we heard earlier in the report that during the visit of former British Prime Minister David Cameron to Kuwait in 2015, and he announced an agreement to double bilateral trade and investments from £2 billion to £4 billion. Now, how do you see that this affected the markets in both countries?
Yeah, in this occasion, I think let me go back a little bit earlier in 2011, which your report actually mentioned it. In such crucial moment, in 2011 revolution in the Middle East, which actually one of the most, if not the most important event in the modern history of the Middle East, when he decided to visit Kuwait, it says a lot. But go back to his aim of the trade. Let me tell you that this target even has been beaten. Now the trade has been it's actually increased by half a billion. So it's at 4 billion now, it's 4.5 billion now. So it means that the cooperation between the two countries are very much more stronger even than they would have imagined.
Yes. Now, there are joint ventures between Kuwait and Britain, and there are joint projects, that help create jobs in both countries. Now, how do you see those joint ventures will help in increasing and expanding the market and the relationship between the two?
This kind of joint ventures, as I understand, has a lot of potentials, and the agreement was to not only to serve the UK interests, but to serve the Kuwaiti interest as well in terms of training and educating and developing the manpower of Kuwait to be a part of the whole plan of the development plan. And I think the Kuwaiti people are benefiting a lot of such joint ventures between the two countries.
Yes. Now, the British community in the state of Kuwait is accorded to a huge respect and appreciation, and on the other hand, there are about 200,000 Kuwaiti citizens visiting the UK periodically. How does this affect the bilateral relations between the two countries?
It does. If you listen to this morning to the speech by the UK ambassador here, he said some of the Kuwaiti people know London more than I know. So it means that such human relations, if I made this context,
Yes.
says a lot, because the people here, the UK tourists of UK citizens, when they visit the UK, they reflect the culture of the UK, they reflect the manners of the UK, they reflect how the UK thinking, and this helps quite a lot in the both countries to understand the mentality of each other, and this will help quite a lot to find a way if there is any tension, and to find a way of the new horizons of cooperations.
Yes. Mr. Amr, apart from the political and economic fields, no doubt that the UK is one of the most special tourist attractions in the world, and also for many Kuwaitis. Now, what are the main factors of tourism attraction that would encourage Kuwaitis to visit Britain in your
I don't want to be in a position to promote the UK tourism, obviously. However, the Kuwaiti people feel they are at home when they visit the UK. They find the Muslim and the Arab and wider Muslim community, so they can practice their religion. They can find cafes. They feel that they are very welcomed by the British people, which is quite an important thing. And they have, of course, you know that they have a lot of investment there. They have properties, apart from shopping and sightseeing and everything. So unless the Kuwaiti people feel that they feel at home in the UK, they wouldn't be happy to visit this country.
Yes. Now, also, the state of Kuwait is seeking to improve its medical system with the help of expertise in the medical fields. Now, what are, in your opinion, the collaboration between the two countries in that area?
I understand that Kuwait has 6,500 students studying in the UK. A part of them studying medicine as well, and the medical care. Mm-hmm. And this obviously not only helping the Kuwaiti people who are traveling to the UK seeking for medication, but it will help the community of the medicine and the medical care in Kuwait to be trained, to be able to help the Kuwaiti people in Kuwait, which is quite significant thing. That's why I understand there is a lot of some sort of small, if I may say this, agreements between some institutions in the UK, in the Kuwait, and in the UK universities, helping the Kuwaiti students to be developed and to get the experience of the UK medical school in order to be able to help their people inside Kuwait.
Okay. Mr. Amr, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for joining us in the program tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Our dear viewers, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more guests. Thank you. Come back, our dear viewers, to this special program on the 120th anniversary of the Kuwaiti-British relations. Now, what we have in our second segment, Mr. Adil Darwish, a writer, a journalist, and a commentator from the UK based in the Parliament. We would like to welcome him to the show. But before we go ahead and talk to him, we would like to present you with the following report on His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah's visit to the United Kingdom in 2012, and we'll be back with our guest.
His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah arrived in the United Kingdom on the 27th of November 2012 for a 3-day state visit upon an invitation from Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The visit gave a significant boost to the distinguished bilateral relations bounding the two friendly countries in various fields. His Highness the Emir is well known in the UK decision-making quarters, namely his past marathon service in the diplomatic sector that had lasted for 42 years. His Highness the Emir's talks with the British officials addressed a host of issues of commercial, financial, defense, and educational nature. The security in the Gulf loomed high in the high-profile discussions. Upon his arrival, Queen Elizabeth II hosted at Windsor Castle a dinner banquet in honor of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah and the official delegation accompanying him on the occasion of his state visit to the United Kingdom. The Queen shed light on the historic relations between the UK and Kuwait and how bilateral cooperation would further serve the best interests of the people of the two countries. The United Kingdom paid tribute to His Highness the Emir's leading contribution to the promotion of a vibrant democracy and applauded his efforts to guide Kuwait to a future of openness and tolerance. During his official visit to the United Kingdom, His Highness the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah, visited the British Parliament House, where he was greeted by John Bercow, Speaker of the House of Commons, and Baroness de Souza, Speaker of the House of Lords, and by a number of lawmakers from both houses. In a speech addressing the Parliament, His Highness the Emir said that Kuwait had recently celebrated the 50th anniversary of the emergence of a comprehensive constitution for the nation, filled with ideas and values which it shares with the British Constitution. His Highness the Emir emphasized that Kuwait also shared democratic values with Britain and that it adheres to the separation of the three major branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the legal. He added that Kuwait upholds the principles of freedom for all and strives to build firm relations with its partners and friends around the world. He applauded the growing ties between the parliaments of both countries, noting the long-standing relationship between them in myriads of fields. He moreover praised the work being done by the Kuwaiti British Parliamentary Friendship Society, whose achievements contribute to the enhancement of bilateral relations. John Bercow, the chairman of the UK House of Commons, expressed his deep appreciation to His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah for his visit to the headquarters of the Assembly and to the House of Lords. He praised the wisdom of His Highness the Emir in tackling various national issues and hailed the Kuwaiti state steps in support of democracy, defense of human rights, and freedom of expression. His Highness the Emir's talks with the British officials coincided with the celebrations marking the 60th anniversary of Kuwait Investment Office in London. His Highness the Emir's visit depicted the historic and distinguished relationship bounding London with Kuwait City. Kuwait and the UK inked memos of understanding on easing visit visa restrictions for diplomatic passport holders and immigration. The intensive meetings between Kuwaiti and UK officials during His Highness the Emir's visit to London reflect the depth of the historical relations between both countries.
Welcome back, our dear viewers, to our special program. We would like to welcome again Mr. Adil Darwish to our show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the state visit of His Highness the Emir, just like you saw in the report earlier, to the UK received a great attention from both sides. What are the political significance of this visit, and how did it help to strengthen the bilateral ties between both countries?
Well, we need actually to explain to our dear viewers the nature of the state visit. Because state visit actually symbolizes three aspects actually of the visit: the constitutional, the historic, and the political, as you kindly have said. State visit, there are several types of visits. State visits happens in the life of a head of a state only once. It doesn't happen more than once. And not every state in the world, there are 212 states actually in the world who are members of the United Nations. Not every head of a state actually have this honor of Her Majesty the Queen inviting him or her to a state visit. Then there are the official visits, which then can be Prime Minister or head of a state. Then there's the working visit and private visits. For this friendship between the United Kingdom and the state of Kuwait, which was actually beyond the 120 years. 120 years are the official signing of the 1899 treaty. It goes back actually 200 years earlier than that. But this actually state visit actually symbolizes, as I said, historic, constitutional, and the political. But His Highness the Emir comes so many times to London and to United Kingdom. It's a second home for every Kuwaitis. And you see the importance of the United Kingdom, that the Kuwait embassy staff are 44 who have actually diplomatic identification within the Foreign Commonwealth Office, and that reflects the importance that Kuwait actually gives to relations with the United Kingdom. The state visit here also marks, he was the guest of Her Majesty the Queen, the guest of the crown. That's why he went into a coach pulled by horses, not actually into a normal car. When he went to Downing Street or went to Parliament, he actually went in a car. So it's actually, it signifies the difference. And that's actually, here the closeness in similar the constitutional system between Kuwait and United Kingdom, and I think Kuwait was emulating United Kingdom here, that you have the head of a state. The state is separate from the government. Government changes. The state institutions do not change. And this is very, very important distinction. And that's why Kuwait, for example, is one of the most stable countries in the world. There. So this is quite very, very important. Actually. Hence so when actually His Highness the Emir came to the Houses of Parliament where my office is, we journalists were very excited there. He's a friendly country of Kuwait, where the British soldiers actually went and fought a war shoulder to shoulder with the Kuwaiti soldiers and Kuwaiti boys and girls. So that was quite exciting for us as journalists in Parliament. John Bercow was mentioned in the report, who is the Speaker of the House of Commons. He's controversial figure. So again, anybody he meets, and some people in the diary pieces, which is quite sort of light-hearted piece, were making the comparison of the wisdom of the Emir and how the controversial figures and the statements that the Speaker makes.
Yes. Also, this visit left a great impression, on the ties and the establishment of the UK-Kuwait Joint Steering Group. Now, what are exactly the role and the duties of this steering group?
As I mentioned, because the state visit gives a huge amount of weight to who the visitor is, and you can see, for example, President Trump has not been invited, although he's been invited to a state visit. It hasn't happened yet. He came to an official visit last year, but the state hasn't happened. It just gives you the actual whole weight and the importance of a state visit. The state visit would have to cement what's already there. On the state level, that's why he went and visited the legislative, and on the executive, which is the government. So on the executive level, you actually have these working committees who work on finance and commerce and education, on culture, society, and military, very important. And the relations between nations is always the people. So how are you going to translate two crowns, two heads of states meeting? How are you going to translate two prime ministers meeting into actually working groups? So the steering group meets several times every year. And for example, the never before State Investment Office opened actually a center in London. Kuwait was the first one, I think 1952 or 1953, very long time ago when it actually opened there. And that's actually opened the rest of many countries to follow this kind of investment. Then you have the education. You have, I think 6,500 and something, nearly 6,600 of Kuwaiti students studying there in university and so on. So it's already there, all these relations there, but the steering committees just organize them on diplomatic level, embassy to embassy, on the cultural, education, commerce. Commerce is very, very important. This is how the two mentalities, the Kuwaiti mentality and the British mentality, meet together, because it's a commercial, economic mentality, strengthening. Kuwait existed as an entity, as I said, the first in the region because of the commercial mentality and the economic mentality.
Now, how did this group further bolster and strengthen the relationship between the two countries?
It is actually legalizing or finding sort of a way of rules and regulations of what's already existing and building on what is there, whether actually in the banking center you have the rules and regulation. So it's just making what's already exist is official. What I personally would like to see the steering group looking into, because we've been speaking about the past. I know in Britain we are sort of preoccupied with history, the Arabs actually preoccupied with history, but we need to look into the future and the present. The present is we are leaving the European Union, United Kingdom. Yes. And I would love to see the steering groups evolving into the next stage. What kind of relationship going to be between the Kuwait and the United Kingdom? And actually, I would humbly say here that Britain should really build on what Kuwait invested. Kuwait looked eastward. Kuwait looked into China and India and the East. Long time ago, we've seen actually Kuwait buying and investing in land in Cambodia, for example, to plant rice and plant vegetables and so on, all in Vietnam, Cambodia, etc. And actually Britain is behind that, has not really widened this investment to China and to the Far East. And I would love to see the steering committees there looking into what will happen next year after we leave the European Union.
Yes. Now, no doubt that the scale of mutual trade between the two countries it reflects how deep the bilateral relations between them. Now, would you mention some of the numbers and statistics regarding the trading volume between Kuwait
well,
and
I think some 5.4, 5.6 billion, the investment there. As I said, the students, 7,500. Yes. I can't even count the number of Kuwaiti investment. The Kuwaiti bank there and is one of the big investors there. On the stock exchange, the Kuwaiti Office of Investment is sort of, I think, the third largest group there in trading into the stock on the stock exchange. And Kuwait is all trusted. The other thing, actually, I noticed also when we're looking into these figures and statistics, how during the invasion and during the occupation of Kuwait, which lasted about 9 months, from August the 2nd until the 25th of February, and the commitment from Britain, of course, that when you send the United Kingdom soldiers, you send your boys and girls to die on the sand and spill their blood on the sand from another country. That means this country, for you, is very important as friendship, as part of your sphere of interest. And here I talk about sort of, you mentioned the commercial interest here, and that was actually part of it. I noticed, because I've written actually 2 books on that period, and how the Kuwaiti investment sustained Kuwaitis who actually found themselves trapped abroad, could not come back to Kuwait, and the Kuwaiti families inside Kuwait, and that was the role of the Kuwaiti resistance, which is my book, The Edge of War, and the resistance of Fauci, about that. how the Kuwaiti investment, which everyone's saying, oh, Kuwait isn't oil producing. No, it wasn't. I mean, there was no oil production coming through its 9 months. But you have seen how the wisdom of then Sheikh Sabah with the foreign minister, Sheikh Saad and Sheikh Jabir, how they have investment outside the oil sector, which actually more than half of the Kuwaiti investment and the Kuwaiti budget that they managed to sustain the people of Kuwait, outside Kuwait and inside Kuwait.
Yes. Thank you very much for your time. It was very delightful, and you had a lot of information. It was very great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Our
much.
dear viewers, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back with more guests. Please stay tuned. Thank you. Welcome back, our dear viewers, to our special program marking the 120th anniversary of the Kuwaiti-British relationship. The relationship between Britain and Kuwait dates back to the middle of the 18th century and still prosper up to date, and the two countries form a strong alliance in various domains. Despite the great geographical distance between the two countries and the differences of languages, customs and traditions between the two sides, all these factors did not prevent the establishment of a special relation between the state of Kuwait and the United Kingdom. Now we're going to show you this short report that we have prepared for you, and we'll be back with our guest, Dr. Saeed Shahata.
The relationship between Britain and Kuwait dates back to the middle of the 18th century and the activities of the British East India Company, which eventually set up an office in the country in 1793 and by 1821 had moved its trading post to Kuwait from the city of Basra. Throughout the 19th century, the El Sabah family oversaw the growing trade and pearling settlement in Kuwait. At a time of vulnerability, Kuwait's rulers quickly developed considerable diplomatic skills, maintaining a policy of neutrality that enabled them to work with the British and others. In the last quarter of the 19th century, Kuwait developed close ties with the Ottoman, but fearing a direct takeover, Kuwait decided to establish a formal alliance with Britain under His Highness Mubarak al-Kabir in 1899 that gave Britain control of Kuwait's foreign policy. Since the 1770s, the British had been contracted to deliver mail between the Gulf and Aleppo in Syria. Meanwhile, Kuwait handled all the transshipments of textiles, rice, coffee, sugar, tobacco, spices, teak and mangrove to and from India, and played an essential role in the overland trade to the Mediterranean. The alliance with Britain allowed Mubarak al-Kabir to lay down the foundations of a modern state. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, Britain confirmed that Kuwait was a British province, and in the Second World War, His Highness Sheikh Ahmed al-Jabr al-Sabah allowed Britain to station aircrafts in Kuwait. The Anglo-Kuwaiti Friendship Agreement remained in place for 62 years and was ended at the request of His Highness Sheikh Abdullah al-Salim on the 19th of June 1961. During the 1930s, the British Anglo-Persian Oil Company sent a representative to Kuwait to negotiate a business to explore for oil, and in 1934, the Kuwait Oil Company was formed and registered as a joint enterprise with the Anglo-Persian Oil Company. World War II forced the Kuwait Oil Company to suspend its operations, but when oil exports took off after the war, Kuwait's economy launched on an incredible route of wealth. Thus, Britain secured a new energy source, and Kuwait steered in a new era of progress and prosperity. In 1950, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah al-Salim al-Sabah was the first emir to witness oil as one of the main incomes of Kuwait. Using the country's newfound wealth, he invested in healthcare, education, and infrastructure, modernizing the state and improving the general standard of living. Kuwait also sent students and delegates to the UK to deepen their knowledge and expert areas related to the oil industry and civil administration. In 1955, His Highness Sheikh Abdullah al-Salim al-Sabah visited Britain in his capacity as head of the National Police, later importing many measures and practices from the UK. On the 19th of June 1961, Kuwait became an independent state. The agreement with Britain was dissolved by mutual consent. British forces, later replaced by those of the Arab League, faced down the challenge, but as following tragic events would prove, the pattern was to be repeated. British forces played a vital role in the liberation of Kuwait by way of the coalition in 1991. The UK committed the largest number of forces of any European coalition member, putting together 53,000 soldiers. The overall campaign was known as Operation Desert Shield, but the UK had its own name for its part, Operation Granby. On January 17, 1991, 5.5 months later after the invasion of Kuwait, the coalition began to put in motion their master plan. In less than a week, the UK's air forces alone had flown over 2,000 raids, many targeting Iraqi infrastructure including bridges and oil refineries. Iraq's air force, made up of around 700 combat jets, was effectively knocked out. On February 22nd, Washington issued an ultimatum to Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait to avoid an all-out ground war. Baghdad did not comply, and 2 days later, coalition forces began operations to liberate Kuwait. In the small hours of February 24th, Britain's elite SAS forces entered Kuwait. They hold the distinction of being the first coalition soldiers to enter Iraqi-held territory. On February 25th, with coalition forces pouring into Kuwait, Britain made what is often noted as its most significant contribution to the conflict. The United Kingdom's and Kuwait's Memorandum of Understanding was signed in February 1992. It builds on the close historical ties and provides a modern basis for the traditionally strong defense relationship. As of today, the United Kingdom is one of Kuwait's most important trade partner and ally.
Welcome back, our dear viewers, to our special program. Please let us welcome our guest, Dr. Saeed Shahata, who is a university professor in the UK. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dr. Saeed, we would like to start with how did this Anglo-Kuwaiti agreement help Kuwait build a modern state, in your opinion?
Yeah, because in 1899, when the Anglo-British friendship agreement signed between Kuwait and Britain, it gives the Kuwaiti to be sovereign within inside the Kuwait over their people. So the sovereignty, domestic sovereignty, was for Kuwait. Defense and the external affairs or foreign affairs who lied in the British hands. So this is the agreement between them, and it gives the protection for Kuwait from the ambitions of the Ottoman Empire. And it was like even the British were not happy with the because there is some competition between the British and the Ottoman Empire, especially with regarding with the British Indian Company, and they moved the mail path from Basra to Kuwait, and then they did, like in 1841, a marine agreement between the two countries in order to spread the security and the stability in the area. So the historical bond between the two countries formally started in 1899, which gives Kuwait sovereignty over their people and left the foreign affairs and defense for the British. Then it moved to 1961, when the independence of Kuwait over their foreign affairs and as independent states. And the British were happy to do that because the relationship was based on mutual respect and the cooperation between them. So the modern state of Kuwait started in 1899 with this Anglo-British agreement, and it was materialized in utmost image with the 1961 independence of Kuwait as an independent state and a member of the Arab League and then of the United Nations.
Dr. Saeed, what are the most important bases you think that contributed to establishing a solid relation between the two countries?
I think the main one is the mutual respect. Even Kuwait is like a small country, but they offer a lot for the international community. And Kuwait, because of their strategic location, the British benefit from it. So there is mutual benefit, mutual respect between the two countries. And they build on that because if there is respect between two sides, you can build other aspects of the relationship. So there is trade deals, there is investment, and the first sovereign fund of which materialized in 1953. The investment office of Kuwait in Britain was the first one of a state in Britain, 1953, and it has investment billions of dollars inside Britain and all over Europe. So Britain has become the headquarters of the Kuwaiti investment inside Britain and abroad. In addition to that, there is the trade deals between the two countries increased in a volume, and it reached in 2018 to more than $4.5 billion, which shows how is it increased from compared to 2017 about 8%. From 2012 to 2018 it increased by 40%. And this came after the the Prince of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah, visit Britain, and they establish this steering committee or group between the two countries to follow up on high level, on different levels, on medical level, on educational level, cultural level, diplomatic level, political level, economic level. So all of these levels support each other's, you know, and if you look at the number of the Kuwaiti students in Britain, it increased to be 6,500, and it shows like it increased from year to year. So there is trust in the British educational system. They come back and they are employed in high positions in the government and private sector. So there is many aspects, but the core, the essence of the strength of the relationship is the mutual respect between the two countries, because we cannot ignore the foreign role of Kuwait under the auspices of the prince, who has a long experience in diplomacy, started by the position of Kuwait with regard to the Gulf crisis, and the British support Kuwait to do that. So there is many things, you know, Kuwait contributes to the international community, and Britain appreciate that. At the same time, Britain does a lot of things to Kuwait regarding security, defense, and arms. And so there is many files and aspects and issues which support and strengthen the relationship between the two sides.
In your opinion, what do you think are the most important fields that could strengthen the relationship between the two countries?
It's very hard to single out one sector, because each sector, as I said, supporting each other, is overlapping. If you look at the education, so the Kuwaiti students who come back from Britain to Kuwait, they transfer the knowledge which they learned from Britain. When you have like 10,000 British residents in Kuwait, they transfer the image of Kuwait and the role of Kuwait, and they're trying to build, reform the economy, privatization. So this like they move that back to Britain. So this like on one side the culture thing, when there is some British musical groups come here and play, you know, like in the opera and other places. When there is some Kuwaiti go there. When there is some round tables, the steering committee, the defense, where is the Kuwait depending on the arms and the experience and the advice from the British Army, when they benefit from the NHS, the National Health Service in Britain, to reform the medical department here. So each sector supporting the other in order to make the whole picture and strengthen the whole picture of the relationship between the two sides.
Yeah. Now, based on the long history between the two countries and the deep-rooted relationship between the two, how do you see the future of this relationship?
I think the future, as the British ambassador here in Kuwait said, he hopes that the next 120 years see more strength in the relationship. Looking at the past and the present, and what's happening on the ground from today, where is the celebration starting today, and it will goes across the year. So there is many events will happen in Britain and in Kuwait. One of them will be like many politicians will meet, organized by His Excellency the Ambassador Khalid Duwaisan in Britain. When you have like some musical groups coming here, and there is some academics, and so all over the years they will celebrate and highlight the importance of the relationship. There is steering committee meeting twice a year. Having next the 14th meeting in summer in London, and they do one in December at the end of the year in Kuwait. So there's a 14th one coming, and it shows the vision of the two countries to strengthen. And if we will expecting Britain will go out of the European Union, the Brexit. So Britain is looking for partners in trade and other, and Kuwait one of them, because the relationship between the two countries, since it started, there is no stain on it. It's a very strong relationship, and there is mutual interest and respect. So based on the past and the present and what's happening on the ground this year, I think there is interest from the two countries to benefit. More students will come to Britain, and more tourists, like about 200,000 Kuwaiti tourists in Britain, the 10,000 British residents in Kuwait. So all of that, it shows it will carry on to a brighter future.
Yes. Now, even after cancelling the Anglo-Kuwaiti Treaty, now Britain remained a strong ally to Kuwait, and you just mentioned earlier, evident from history of the different stands, where Britain stand, next to Kuwait. Now, providing various, modes of political and economic support to Kuwait. Now, how do you see those events shape the mutual relation between both countries?
I think Britain is determined and committed to defend Kuwait because Kuwait asking for that, and they appreciate the role of Britain. And the two main moments in the support of Britain to Kuwait was in 1961 and 1991. 1961, when Abdul Karim Qasim of Iraq claiming like Kuwait is one of the cities of Iraq, so the British sent troops and they spent 5 months in Kuwait to stop any kind of invasion from Iraq and then the Arab troops, after Kuwait has become a member of the Arab League, came and they replaced the British troops. And the main moment was in 1990 after the Iraqi invasion to Kuwait. Margaret Thatcher, the then Prime Minister, was determined to help Kuwait, and with President George Bush, and she said we shouldn't be lenient towards Saddam Hussein, and we should liberate Kuwait as quick as possible. And they put troops, and some troops like sacrificed their lives in Kuwait. And I think Kuwait appreciate the role of Britain to defend Kuwait. So based on that and the defense agreement between them and the arms, I think Britain is committed to defend Kuwait, and Kuwait is happy to have Britain to defend it.
Yes. Now, in the 1950s, the late Emir Sheikh Abdullah Salam Sabah was the first Emir to witness oil as the main source of income to Kuwait. Now, what was the role played by the United Kingdom at that era?
The British and Britain since 1899, and there was like acceptance of the British to be in Kuwait, to help Kuwait. And when the oil was discovered in Kuwait, was the first one was the British companies come to help discoveries and to do like exports, and like they were the main player of helping Kuwait to use the oil resources in order to companies and like wells and other stuff, refineries and experts from Britain to help Kuwait to use this important resources for the future. And it was like the British was controlling most of the oil, but after that the Kuwaiti company controlled everything, because it was like agreement 50%, but like after that the Kuwaiti like nationalized all of it and controlling the oil, but with the respect of Britain to have like experts and oil go to Britain. So it was like discussion about how to use that based on mutual respect, not based on force but convincing and discussion and dialogue. And this is the reason, like as I said, the mutual respect between the two countries is the backbone of the relationship between them.
Dr. Shahada, before we end this segment, is there any final thoughts you would like to share with our audience?
What I'm to end is the Prince of Kuwait. He has a vision, and I think in his presence he strengthens the relationship between Britain and Kuwait. And I believe this year will help to strengthen the relationship, where they highlight the different aspects of the cooperation between the two countries.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And our dear viewers, for the past hour, we brought to you highlights of the solid bilateral relations between the State of Kuwait and the United Kingdom, marking its 120th anniversary, with our valuable guests that were with us here tonight and are visiting Kuwait right now. On your behalf, we would like to thank our guests for their time and efforts, and would like to thank you again for tuning in and joining us tonight. We hope to see you in a future program. Thank you so much.